So I will be talking about biotechnology. So what are some important safety and ethical issues raised by this use of recombinant DNA? So the social concerns are if blending of animal and human DNA results in intentionally or not, should these entities be given rights and special protections? The next is what, if any, social and legal controls or reviews should be placed? What unintentional personnel, social, and cultural consequences could result? Who will have access to these technologies, and how will scarce resources such as medical advances and novel treatments be allocated? Are we inflicting pain and suffering on creatures when we create a certain type of shamans? What are the known health risks associated with transgenics? Are there long-term effects on the environment when transgenics or genetically modified organisms are released into the field? Should research be limited, and if so, how should the limits be decided? How should the limits be enforced nationally and internationally? Intrinsic concerns. Are there fundamental issues with creating new species? Will transgenic interventions in humans create physical or behavioral traits that may or may not be readily distinguished from what is usually perceived to be human? What, if any, research in genetic engineering should be considered morally impermissible and banned? So here we have the rabbits that can glow in the dark, and here we have the rat that had the ear grown on it. So these are to show you what they are doing with it and whether it is ethically okay or even safe for these animals. Do we know what this is causing for the rabbits? Is it affecting their health? Is it affecting how they live? What are some of the possible dangers of introducing genetically engineered organisms into the environment? So health risks of genetic engineering have sometimes been described as exaggerated, alarmist terms, implying that foods made from GE crops are inherently unsafe. There is no evidence, for instance, that refined products derived from GE crops, such as starch, sugar, and oils, are different than those derived from conventionally bred crops. However, there are known ways that genetically engineered crops could cause health problems. For instance, genes from an allergenic plant could transfer this unwanted trait to the target plant. This phenomenon was documented in 1996 as soybeans with a Brazil nut gene added to improve their value as animal feed produced an allergic response in test subjects with Brazil nut allergies. So environmental. Genetically engineered crops can potentially cause environmental problems that result directly from engineered traits. For instance, an engineered gene may cause a GE crop or a wild relative of that crop to become invasive or toxic to wildlife. But the most damaging impact so far is the phenomenon of the pesticide resistance. So millions of acres in the U.S. farmland are now infested by weeds that have become resistant to the herbicide glyphosate. Overuse of monocytes Roundup Ready trait, which is engineered to tolerate the herbicides, has promoted the acceleration development of resistance in several weed species. So, looking for ways to fight back against these super weeds, farmers are now turning to older, more toxic herbicides such as 2,4-D and dicamba. Agribusinesses companies have begun to develop new G crops engineering to tolerate these older herbicides, with no guarantee that the Roundup Ready story will not repeat itself, producing a new wave of resistant weeds. And this issue is not confined to herbicides. Recent reports suggest a growing problem of corn rootworms resistance to the insecticide Bt, which some corn varieties have been engineered to produce. So right here you can see this is the corn that has the worms in it, and this right here you can see short-term use and the long-term use. You can see the long-term use, the plants aren't growing as good, they're not full, they're not as green. So my own thoughts. I believe that some things are not being taken into consideration. These animals that are being used to do this testing do not get a say. I feel that is unethical to do. For example, like the rabbit that glows in the dark. We don't know if this affects the rabbit or if it has any impact on the life quality and its span. These are also the pesticides that are used by the farmers to grow their plants cause the plants to become immune. That also affects the people who are eating it. I also believe that if we start using gene therapy to treat disorders, the branch between social classes will widen extensively. Basically, the people who can afford gene therapy will be healthier and live longer, and they'd almost be a superhuman race. And then there would be the less fortunate who can't afford the expensive procedures, and they would be looked down upon and even less well off than they were before. It is a good concept to treat inherited disorders in theory, but if actually used in a world full of selfish people, only bad will come of it in the long run. So, what issues do I think are important? So because of this, there are children that are developing faster. There are cancers that we have never seen before. There's some rights that might be violated. And it's only going to cause people to want more of the best and find new ways to fix things while possibly creating more problems. Thank you.